20 bizarre things our ancestors did. Human zoos. Human zoos were set up in the mid-1950s in European countries like Belgium, then populated with Africans and people from Asia to prove the theory of evolution. Probably more shameful than weird, and hopefully history won't repeat itself on this one. Sending kids through the mail. If you think you are the first person to consider putting yourself in the mail to save on travel expenses, think again. Early in the 20th century, if you had 15 cents, you could send your child to visit relatives through the U.S. mail if they were the same weight as a standard parcel. Animal trials. In the Middle Ages, there were formal court trials for animals who allegedly committed crimes or otherwise broke the law. Innocent until proven guilty, many animals, including cats, pigs, cows, and chickens, were accused of the illegal practice of witchcraft. Human sacrifices. Traces of offering human sacrifices to please the deities are found in many ancient cultures. Aztecs and the Mayans are most well known in the history books for human sacrifices. In ancient Egypt, dead pharaohs were buried with all of their servants, even if they were still alive. Chopines. In the 17th century, women were wearing shoes called Chopines, whose platform base measured up to 20 inches off the ground. Chopines were both worn as a fashion statement and to keep the hem of a dress well above the muddy streets. In order to wear them, though, the ladies needed servants to help them walk. Dueling. Up until the mid-1800s, offended gentlemen would challenge the one who disgraced them to a duel by throwing a glove on the ground in front of them. To avoid a duel was a sign of cowardice. However, the weirdest thing about dueling is that it is still legal in Texas. Fists only, of course. Bathing machines. In the 18th and 19th centuries, when women couldn't even show their ankles, bathing machines were used to maintain privacy when swimming at the beach. These were enclosed mobile carts that bathers could drive into the water and then swim without fear of being peeked at by fellow Victorians. 8. Skull surgeons. Maybe not so much weird as ahead of their time. In about 1000 AD, Incan surgeons began drilling holes in patients' skulls who suffered from intracranial disease or to relieve built-up blood pressure resulting from an injury. Believe it or not, this procedure, also known as trepanation, had a 90% survival rate by the 1400s. 9. Baby cages. In 1922 London, when babies couldn't get out for fresh air every day to purify their blood, baby cages became all the rage. Fastened to an outside window in a city apartment, this wire cage would be suspended over the street so the baby could breathe in the fresh air of the city. 10. Prohibition of alcohol in the USA. In the United States, people were destroying illegal alcohol almost as fast as it could be distilled. Prohibition was in full swing and lasted from 1920 to 1933 until President Franklin D. Roosevelt wanted a scotch on the rocks and repealed it. Cars pharmacy. Early in the 20th century, people purchased their gasoline in a can from the local pharmacy, long before gas stations were permanent fixtures on every corner in every city, like today. Animal dung for medical treatment. Not to be outdone in the category of strange medical remedies, many Egyptian warriors treated their battle wounds with animal dung. Centuries later, the Scots used sheep manure to treat smallpox. To stop nosebleeds, they preferred the droppings of pigs. Pregnancy test using garlic. In 1350 BC, women were advised to urinate on wheat seeds as a method to determine pregnancy. If the seeds sprouted, she was pregnant. Another method for a pregnancy test was to place an onion or clove of garlic in the woman's vagina overnight. The next morning, a doctor would smell her breath. If he could sense the garlic aroma, she was pregnant. On the other hand, to prevent pregnancies, women in ancient Greece used crocodile feces as a contraceptive. Cat burning. In the 17th century, the weird citizens of Paris would gather in Place de Grève to celebrate by dancing around a bonfire in midsummer while burning sacks full of live cats. This was the punishment for the cats who associated with devils and witches, although their ashes were considered lucky. Live alarm clocks. In the mid-18th century, someone came up with the unusual idea of human alarm clocks. This was a profession formerly known by the term knocker-upper and involved a person knocking on people's windows until they woke up. Although, the knocker-uppers didn't become really weird until the 1950s, when alarm clocks were cheap and plentiful. Heroin as a cough remedy. Up until about 100 years ago, heroin was sold as cough medicine in pharmacies, sometimes recommended for children. Thought of as a harmless replacement for morphine, it wasn't until 1924 that the sale of it was banned. Posing for photos with the dead. And while you were picking up your heroin at the pharmacy, you could drop off the photos of you and your family posing with your dead relatives. While postmortem photography was mainly popular in the mid to late 1800s, the really weird part is that there is evidence that it continued as an underground practice well into the 1960s in the US. Body parts as souvenir. As late as World War II, soldiers brought home souvenirs from the field of battle in the form of their enemies' skulls and other bones to add to their body parts collections. Dyeing teeth black. In the field of strange dentistry, people of the 16th and 17th centuries dyed their teeth black. Teeth were traditionally dyed black in old age as a sign of maturity, but mainly to prevent tooth decay. And you have to wonder, who was the first one who figured this out? 20. Second sleep periods. People of the Middle Ages also adopted the practice of what is known as biphasic sleep. Middle Agers first went to bed at sunset, then got up again at midnight for a few hours, and then went back to bed. Perhaps they were using the time awake at midnight to catch the animals in the act of practicing the dark arts.